Hey, I'm Rob,
And I'm Mike.
and we're just two normal lads exploring the mysterious, the controversial, and the conspiratorial.
Join us each week down the rabbit hole for our latest exciting discussions, ideas, and tinfoil banter.
Tinfoil Banter, serious questions, questionable conclusions.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Tinfoil Banter. Today we're going to be talking about JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the US president that was sadly assassinated in 1963. I'm just going to start by talking through the kind of historical events that led up to his assassination and there afterwards as well, and then just kind of talk about the interesting narratives that came out initially and have been challenged since. I found this really interesting when I started researching it because there's a lot I didn't know about the real fine detail, and that's kind of the really interesting, exciting stuff. And so hoping to share some of that today. So JFK was a son of Irish immigrants, I believe. So he had three brothers, I think. So he had Joe, Ted, and Robert. Robert being the father of RFK Jr., who's the health secretary of the United States. There's Ted Kennedy. I think he was in the Democratic Party for like many, many years. And then Joe Kennedy was, I think, their oldest son and was initially kind of being groomed to be the president, but was sadly killed in World War II. I think it was 1944. He was killed in a bombing mission.
1944. His plane exploded over the English Channel.
Yeah, that is sad. So then, obviously, I think JFK was kind of next in line to kind of go, take into his brother's stead, and then successfully became president in 1961. I think he was pretty loved, right, Mike? Like everyone seemed to.
Yeah, he was the youngest president, so I think they were looking for new blood and a new way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's like quite a few great things he did. We're going to really focus on the things that become relevant to potential alternative narratives, let's say. But there are some obviously great things he did. Obviously, he gave a great speech about peace, which I think was a bit later in his presidential campaign. I kind of felt like he was someone that if I was alive, then I would have aligned with, So yeah, it was quite inspiring to read about everything he did, all the good stuff. But there was obviously some bad stuff as well. I think he kind of carried on the Bay of Pigs operation that had already kind of been started by the previous presidency, and that ended up being an absolute nightmare.
Absolute mare.
It's absolute mare. So the Bay of Pigs was like an invasion that the CIA kind of set up, and the idea was that they were going to go to Cuba and basically infiltrate and overthrow the government to get, I think it's Fidel Castro out, because he was like a communist-backed, Russia-backed, linked. That they were not happy with. So anyway, I think it ended up with those people actually dying, and it did not go well. So he obviously spoke out publicly about how that wasn't handled.
Yeah, I know a bit about that. It was Russia were planning on holding some nukes in Cuba because the Americans had nukes in Turkey. I think as part of the agreement, actually, to get the nukes away in the end was to pull out the missiles from Turkey and from Cuba.
Exactly that, yeah. So that was basically the Bay of Pigs incident was the failure initially, and then you got the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is later. But that's the one you're talking about.
Okay.
But
as you said, I know a bit about that.
No, I mean, this is guess the details that maybe people don't know and find interesting. I obviously have read about this recently, and I'm only kind of speaking about it because I've spoken about because I've read about it recently, right? So, but no, the Bay of Pigs was first, and then later on, the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, and I think basically he was outvoted in this to sort of because they all wanted to just like bomb Cuba and just overthrow Castro, and he took a back channel directly to I can't pronounce his name. Is it Khrushchev?
Khrushchev,
the Russian president. And it sounds like, I feel like Khrushchev and him had a kind of almost quite a good relationship, which is quite surprising considering the tension that was already there around the Cold War and then later as well with Vietnam. But it seemed like they kind of got on and understood, even though they were different, come from different places, that whilst they had these nuclear arsenal, they really didn't want to use it. So I was reading some of the letters between them. It's quite a lot of respect in there, and it's very, very different to how you would imagine Trump speaking to Iran right now, for example. It's like a complete polar opposite. But because of that, that you're right. Like they came to agreements and used diplomacy just to undo some things. There was even like a nuclear agreement met with, I think UK were involved in that as well. And that was not long before his assassination. That was in 1963 in August. So, partial nuclear test ban treaty signed by the United Kingdom, Soviet Union, and it was limiting nuclear weapons testing. So, did some really great things and seemed like he was actually looking to change the world and have peace with those that choose to be communist rather than try and attack them and see them as the enemy. That's how I kind of understood it. But
how many countries choose to be communist?
Okay, yeah, it's yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so maybe he just means Russia. I just mean Russia. It's a valid point. Obviously, then 1963 is when he was assassinated. So I've got some details here about what happened on that day. So it's obviously this has been played out loads of times. You can like read about this in places. There's videos you can watch if you've got a strong enough stomach, because it's not a nice thing to look at. But the series of events is what matters. Actually, it's actually the details that's what's really important. So, Mike, any questions so far about what I've said about the lead? JFK's presidency. Anything else you can remember? Because you were alive then, right?
I was about to say he hung out with Marilyn Manson. He didn't hang out with Marilyn Manson. It was Marilyn Monroe. They did have an affair, apparently.
Yeah, and I think she might have also been banging his brother, right?
Possibly. I'll have to ask Marilyn Manson.
I'll have to do a Marilyn Monroe episode, I think.
Yeah, that would be a bad shout.
Yeah, because I think obviously RFK was assassinated as well, wasn't he? I think. Or no, sorry, is it RFK?
His younger brother.
Yeah. He got
LA
killed as well, didn't he? Yeah, he got killed in 1968, so like 4 years later. Anyway, I can't remember why we got on to that point, but I'm still thinking about JFK hanging out with Marilyn Manson. Kind of like that a lot. Cool. So the details of the day, as I was saying. So one thing I also wanted to mention was also just before he died, I mentioned the peace speech he gave. I think it was called a Strategy of Peace, which Khrushchev, which we mentioned earlier, he hailed that the greatest speech an American president has made since Teddy Roosevelt, and it was played throughout the whole Soviet Union. And allegedly, when he found out the news that JFK died, he fell to his knees and cried, and the churches throughout Moscow rang in respect to him. So I think it's really interesting how there's so much respect between the two countries there, even though there's a lot of differences going on in a decade that is so tumultuous between the two countries.
Yeah, they definitely had a bromance by the sounds of it.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It's just like Khrushchev, JFK, Marilyn Manson. Yeah, just hanging out. Anyway, sorry, back to the assassination. So on November 22nd, 1963, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, while riding for a presidential motorcade through the Dealey Plaza. Immediately after he was assassinated, I find this really interesting, the vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, was sworn in. He was sworn in on Air Force One in Texas. And there's a photo of him getting sworn in, and next to him is Jackie Kennedy, and she's covered in blood. It's absolute brutal. It's a really iconic moment and terrible terrible moment. I found that really savage. But
I suppose in times of great distress they need a leader, and so if you haven't got anyone at the top, you need to get someone at the top pretty quick, and he's the vice president. You've already got someone laid out.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to be honest, I think that leads to some of the decisions they made later with the Warren Commission, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is essentially, so after the assassination happened, he was obviously tasked to find out what had happened. I think Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for it, who's the alleged killer, right? He was arrested for it within like an hour and a half of it happening. So they got him, they arrested him, apparently shot from this library where he'd been working, or some like book repository or something, right? 6th floor. And he then tailed it out of there. He got found in a cinema or whatever.
Right.
They arrested him. And then, interestingly, 2 days later, he gets killed by a guy called Jack Ruby. And Jack Ruby is a nightclub owner, but also allegedly a bit of like a mobster. So, and he just kind of shoots him with a revolver as he's coming out of, I think, a police station or something, or a police compound. So we never, but one of the famous lines that he says is, I'm a patsy. And that phrase is like really obviously synonymous with lots of later things that happened, not necessarily JFK related, but.
Well, yeah. What does that mean? I'm a patsy.
Do you want to find a definition and tell our audience?
Yeah,
I did read it today, but I've forgotten. That's a really good point. Anyway, yeah. So 2 days later, he was killed. And yeah, then the Lyndon, obviously, as I said, he was tasked to find out what had happened and kind of prove that the band they'd arrested was, in fact, the killer, right? And obviously, the whole country's in turmoil right now. They've just had a president killed. They've done this big switch. They've got this ordeal happening with Russia and Cuba still. Like, things aren't great still. They've still got to deal with all of that. And, Vietnam, I think, is tensions rising still. So I think really from their perspective, they've got to get an answer and get this closed and done as quick as possible. And because this guy's dead and not gone to trial, but you've never had a chance to hear his testimony. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that happened during that investigation. And there's loads of details around the actual the Warren Commission was the report at the end of that investigation that basically said these were the facts that happened. Did you find your patsy definition, by the way?
The definition of a patsy is a person who is easily taken advantage of, especially by being cheated or blamed for something. So who described themselves as a patsy?
Lee Harvey. Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm the one being taken advantage of.
Yeah, he was like, I've been set up. I've been set up. I'm a patsy. I think he definitely said I'm a patsy. I'm not sure if he said I've been set up, but yeah. Anyway, so he was killed by the nightclub owner, so we never got to hear his full testimony. But that's one of the facts we do have. And he's the alleged killer. The Warren Commission is essentially the commission that was set up to investigate it. The Warren report is what they say happened. And what they officially say happened is that there were 3 shots fired, that the first shot missed completely. I think it like hit a curb and some guy got like concrete blown in his face, and he's like reported like the concrete like bust open his cheek, and that's the bullet hitting the pavement.
Yeah.
The last bullet is the fatal headshot, which is awful. The awful thing that is on camera, and we'll talk about the video in a bit. But the last shot is the second shot is the really, really interesting one. So it's very well known as the magic bullet and the magic bullet theory. And there's some really questionable characters around the magic bullet theory and who like had designed this and said this is what actually happened in this report, right? So essentially the magic bullet has a really interesting trajectory and path. Okay. Bear in mind, Lee Harvey Oswald was supposed to be behind and shot these 3 shots from behind. Okay, 1, 2, 3. First one missed. Last one headshot. Middle one is going through Kennedy's neck, out the front. Then it's going into Governor Connolly, who's in front of him. He's in the front seat. Into his back. Out through his chest, through his wrist, and into his thigh.
Right.
That, and in doing so, has to take some really interesting angles and turns to do that. So that is the big part that's always been questioned by. And there was a later investigation as well called I can't remember what it was. Now it's like the House of Assassinations or something like that. Something
Yeah.
House
That's a wicked band name.
House Select Committee of Assassinations.
House of Assassination.
That was a lot longer a lot later, but essentially they found that it was more probable that it's like was a result of conspiracy. And
Right.
the reason for that is because they believe there must have been 2 shooters.
Yeah.
So the really interesting part about the conspiracy is in the detail of the shots. Is in the detail of who they said was the killer, and he's got a really interesting background as well. We can probably talk about as well, but and the report that was initially made in comparison to forensic witness evidence that were on the scene, right? So, for example, the doctors that saw to his body all said that he had a big hole at the back of his head, which is comparable to an exit wound, but the shot was supposed to come from behind. In the photos, in the final report, there is no hole in the head on the back. And people say, even the photographer that took the photo said there was, and that's not the photo that they took. So there was also a difference in the photo that was in the final report. The 2 guys that were the guys doing the autopsy, I think, were not trained in doing they were trained in doing natural deaths.
Okay.
Right? They were underqualified. And I think one of the guys said he burnt the initial draft of the report and resketched it. And I can't remember what his reason was, but he admitted to it, and that's really kind of interesting. So yeah, lots of sketchy stuff around the forensics versus what actually was put in the report. Lots of sketchy stuff around it's what it seemed like is that they already had their guy, he was already dead, and they wanted to just wrap it up. So they were doing everything they could. It's proper confirmation bias, right? Everything they could. And this guy who had come up with this magic bullet theory, it just sounds like he's stretching, right? It just sounds like he's reaching for some way to, because he knows that he can't prove the first bullet hit anything, but we also know how many hits he's supposed to have had, right? So we know how many wounds he has, and the amount of bullets versus the amount of wounds doesn't make sense. Here's another thing: they tested the gun that was apparently used. That gun can't fire that quick. Essentially, I think it was something like the gun apparently fires at 2.5 seconds or something, right? Per round, if you're not even adjusting for the sight. 1, 2, 3, but with 2-second gaps. But the video evidence we got of people moving in response to the bullet is much less time. So what that suggests as well that there might have been a second shooter. And furthermore, the directions in which the people being hit are moving is really interesting, because JFK very famously falls to the back and to the left, which is not really what happens when you get shot behind. But I guess you are in a car and you are stood up, kind of hunched over.
Yeah.
So I guess it would kind of make sense that you naturally fall.
I mean, if the first one goes to his neck, you naturally would want to go forward. And then if you did get a headshot.
The thing is, there's videos of the impact, right? So there's a very famous video. It's called the Zapruder film. The Zapruder film is I think he's like a dressmaker, and he had a little camera, and he just set out for the day because this was a monumental occasion. JFK was running for he was campaigning to be president again. And everyone was really happy to see him. And you can see how happy people are in the video to see him. So he's got to set up a little video camera. And he actually kept that secret for a long time. He didn't release it until a lot later. I think it was only when that other report came around, the I want to mention called the House Select Committee of Assassinations, they were the ones that kind of dug into that video as well and compared him being hit versus the alleged 3 shots from behind from Lee Harvey Oswald. So a lot of very interesting stuff in there. All of this stuff you can go and read up about. None of this is really conspiracy. Most of this is written down. In fact, that I've read and regurgitated from really great sources. One I really recommend is Who Shot JFK on Spotify. That I was hooked on that. So it's quite long. It goes into a lot of detail, but it really got me interested in the topic and got me interested in some of the conspiracies behind it. So we haven't really spoken about the conspiracies, Mike, but any questions about the assassination or the details I've given you there? around.
No, not really. I mean, ballistics and the trajectories do go a bit skewy, especially when they start hitting things, even if it's bone.
Bones. Oh, that's the other thing though. The bullet is
Yeah.
completely immaculate, so it doesn't look like
Okay.
it's impacted anything.
No.
There's another interesting point around the bullet as well.
Uh-huh.
Originally, they couldn't find it, and then it turned up and just was under the stretcher. I think his stretcher he was on, right? JFK was on. As I said, it was immaculate. And then in 2023, which is not that long ago, an old fella came out, and he is basically one of the Secret Service agents that was behind in the car behind.
Yeah.
And he says that he ducked because he was basically getting sprayed with blood matter, blood and brain matter, right?
Yep.
Which also suggests he was behind, so it also suggests he got shot from the front, right? And he was the guy that basically I think. Oh, there's another guy that like shielded Jackie Kennedy, and then this guy comes over, and he was the one that found the bullet, and he just put it in his pocket in the moment, made sure Jackie was okay as well, and then later on he put it on the stretcher. That's what he claims. But so we now understand where the bullet came from and why it was missing. But what makes that interesting is it corroborates the story of it goes against the Warren Commission's report, which says it was 3 shots from behind from Lee Harvey Oswald. So in which case, that means there's a second shooter, and if there's a second shooter, that's absolutely a conspiracy. No matter who you think did it, that's a conspiracy, because that information has been covered up.
Yep. It qualifies to be a podcast.
I think we should make a podcast episode.
I think we should do it.
Yeah. But yeah, really, really fun stuff.
Fun.
Well, no, because obviously it's terrible, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge moment in time. Like,
Yeah.
he was obviously, I must say, I think it's like got to be one of the most famous assassinations ever. One, it was the first one to be televised and video recorded.
That's a sticking point for me. Is why make it so public? If this is an inside job, why make it so public?
Maybe it's easy to cover up. Although it's middle of the day, right?
In the middle of the day, there's loads of people watching. It's being recorded. Why would you pick that moment?
Well, I think really because of the vantage points. Because I don't know if you've seen a video of this place, the plaza, but it's like really tight corner, and like it's kind of like enclosed. And there's the building he's apparently shot from behind, but there's a famous grassy knoll. Do you know what a grassy knoll is? I've never heard of a word grassy knoll before. I thought it was like a hill or something.
I don't think anyone had heard of the word knoll.
Yeah, right.
Before that moment.
Anyway, that's the other side. So that's at the front, and allegedly the second shooter would have been there.
Yeah.
If it existed, if the second shooter existed, that's where his vantage point would have been. So I think the reason they chose that location, it was also he's on an open top motorcade. You've got a straight shot.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe the location of it was all part of the conspiracy. They needed to get into there because it was easy to get in.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many other different methods like poisoning or anything subtle, an explosive device. So public, but
yeah, true. I mean,
I think that's the way the theories are pointing is towards an inside job, right? And there's one organisation that's standing out amongst others, or I suppose one organisation that is standing out, and what would be their motives for doing it?
Right. So I've got some of the like kind of well-known conspiracy angles, right?
Have you got a list of them?
I've got a little one here. Yeah,
I'll have a listen.
Okay. So the first one's the CIA.
Yes.
The reason for the CIA is because not long before, after the Bay of Pigs incident, where the CIA effed up and these people died, and he had to take the blame and say, "Yeah, I let that happen. That's my fault." He basically said, "I think it's something like I'm gonna blow the CIA into 1,000 pieces and blow it to the wind or something like that." Something like he was very vocal about he did not want the CIA to exist anymore. So there's straight motive, right? And also absolute ability to pull something like that off. So yeah, I can see why in the conspiracy world that's a great one. We haven't spoken about Lee Harvey Oswald's background either, but he's tied into potential CIA stuff as well. I'll go on to that in a moment. But the mafia is one. and I mentioned Jack Ruby that killed Lee Harvey Oswald 2 days later, he was like mobster mafia guy. So
Well, yeah, but again, what would be his motive?
I can't remember what the motive of that one was. But we can have a little look at that one. But the other one was the military-industrial complex, which is really interesting. So obviously, because JFK went round their backs to go and basically go straight to Khrushchev and go, no, I know my guys want to blow up Cuba, but I'd rather talk to you like a gentleman and see if we can just sort this out, which, end up working. What that meant was it didn't look great on those guys, right? And
Yeah, that was very American of him.
Also, they get more money if we're spending more on nukes, right? I say we. That's or anyone's getting more.
Lockheed Martin and those sort of players.
Yeah, because they make weapons. That's what they do, right? And they make planes and they make whatever else is needed for war. War pays. The Federal Reserve is a really interesting one. I don't really know about this one that much, but it's like a fringe theory alleging that JFK's issuance of Executive Order 11110 authorized the Treasury to issue silver certificates and threaten the power and privately owned Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve will do a definite episode on, or maybe like something about like America's like history or something, because that's a whole nother thing. So I found that really interesting. And then the grassy knoll theory really is just that theory is just to summarize the idea that there is a second shooter and they would have been involved probably because of those other places. So lots of interesting ones there. Oh, I think my dog didn't like that last one so much. Lots of interesting ones there. But sorry, what was the one I was going to check back on? The Mafia link. Yeah, I'll double check that one. That's interesting.
I did a cursory sort of Google of why would the CIA want Kennedy dead?
The CIA?
Yeah, why would they want him dead? And it was just a sort of a surface level.
Yeah, that's why that would be why the reason that would be because he said he wanted to disband the CIA.
Yeah. The firing of the CIA director, Alan Dulles.
Yeah, he was called the godfather of the CIA, apparently.
So he's fired him.
And another guy as well. And I think that was all because of the Cuban Missile. No, it was all because of the Bay of Pigs incident. All of that happened. So really,
Kennedy's refusal to provide air support to the Bay of Pigs invasion, so he wasn't backing up his guys there.
Exactly.
And Kennedy's plan to cut the agency's budget by 20%, and the belief that the president was weak on communism, which kind of sums up what we've been discussing, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a liberal, so I guess I kind of side with him, but I can see why that would ruffle some feathers.
Especially in an organisation like the CIA, which is quite opaque with how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all like the idea of this individual that can drive us towards peace. And obviously, I think they already get we realise that peace never will exist and can never exist.
It's not the American way.
Yeah, well, there's not necessarily American way. It's just sometimes impossible for nations of such different culture and background to coexist peacefully at all times throughout history, right? So, yeah, war's kind of inevitable. But I find JFK's the timing of his assassination is the really interesting thing for me. The details that were given versus what we found out since, really fascinating. And so for me, if I was to rate this out of being a real conspiracy or not, I would say this one is one that I think in future we will find out that there was way more to this, and there was another party involved. That would be my gut feeling.
I don't think this is really a conspiracy in the same vein as the pyramids or things of that nature and aliens. This is
yes. It's kind of like somewhere new, isn't it? Because in the aliens, I spoke about how we don't have any. It's conceptual, right? Basically, yes. Right? Pyramid, real thing. We can go touch it, but it's in the past. And it's very mystical, but it's not very and it's not very current times. This is a story and a series of events that absolutely, definitely happened. Some of the details obviously up for discussion, but that ultimately means that. And also, I think people relate to this story a lot because a lot of people saw it on TV. It's been repeated throughout time. As I said, it was such a pinnacle moment in history, probably one of the biggest assassinations ever. I would say, what are the ones that come to your mind? JFK, Lincoln, Gandhi, maybe Franz Ferdinand, right? World War One, is that?
Yeah, World War One.
Right. So, but so I think the story, again, like the pyramids, the story that's actually documented alone is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But this one has got way more holes in than the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
This one for me is like, no, there's definitely something else going on here.
There's something else happening there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, that if they went and actually looked at some of the details that have come out subsequently, and they would probably agree with us. I think you're right. That's not really a conspiracy. It's more of
A whodunit.
yeah, it was the most famous murder mystery ever, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool way to end, I guess. But any final thoughts about JFK, mate? Anything you want to add?
Why does Jackie Kennedy get out and go backwards? There's a question for you. She doesn't duck. She doesn't try and get out the door. She tries to get out and go out of the back of the car.
Oh, okay. So what's that? What does that suggest?
That she possibly has seen who's firing.
Which means it comes from the front because she's facing front.
She's trying to get out of the back. If you just seen that happen to you, you'd probably want to get down.
I don't think she let go of him, did she? As well. Well, no, maybe that was afterwards. She wouldn't let go of his body.
Of his body.
Yeah. That's I mean that's apparently that's also the motive, by the way, that Jack Ruby said for killing Lee Harvey Oswald was to save the trauma of Jackie having to come back to Dallas and see the trial of Lee Harvey Oswald.
That was that he white knighted for her.
That's the alleged motive, but there's way more interesting stuff about him. Actually, there is something else we do need to add, is the really weird background of Lee Harvey Oswald. I've mentioned it a couple of times and never went into it, but his build-up's really odd. So 4 years prior to him killing JFK, he's in Moscow. He wants to denounce his American citizenship and become Russian. Right? So basically, he's a bit of a problem child, I think. And then he ends up in the military. And then he gets a little bit of like clearance and ends up working on the U-2 radar plane, which is like a top secret thing. Okay.
They're going to figure out how to get their album on our phone somehow.
Yeah, they've got a big radar thing.
Yeah.
Burst in some. Oh, I mean, I'm not
Some
sure
awful guitar tone.
Yeah, that's probably one of I'd say one of the redeeming features of U2. Actually, I quite like the guitar tone. Anyway, Bono aside, so he's working in this secret plane for a bit, and then because of that, I think he's learning Russian because he's like analyzing Russian communications.
Yeah.
So then he ends up defecting, going to Russia for a bit. I think he was there for like 2 or 3 years. He gets married, has a kid, comes back to America. No worries, they home him here. He gets buddies up with some really interesting people. And there's the alleged thing there is that he was definitely part of some sort of CIA secret program, and it was like a double agent infiltration thing. He even tried to kill himself because he got denied when he went to Moscow, he got denied citizenship in Russia, and so he tried to kill himself. So he would then have to stay in the country for longer, and he ended up staying there. But they basically were like, right, well, we're not going to give you citizenship, but we're going to keep our eye on you. You can stay here. But he still ended up meeting a girl, getting married, having a kid, moving back to the US eventually, no questions asked, and ended up later killing JFK. The conspiracy part is that he may have also been tied up in MK Ultra, and we'll definitely do another episode on that because that's a whole rabbit hole, different rabbit hole that
I've never heard of MK Ultra.
Okay, so briefly, it's essentially a CIA operation that absolutely happened. They admit to, where they were doing lots of things. Actually, the main idea was mind control, is what I understood. So they were like using LSD and hypnosis, to try and control what people did and thought. I think there's like physical and sexual assault in there. I think they were like tortured and shown graphic images, and they were young, impersonable teens. And I believe Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, another episode, he also was allegedly part of MK Ultra. Now, it's not been proven that Lee Harvey Oswald was part of it, but he was the sort of character, and it was the right timing. He could have been part of that. And then that really ties into your conspiracy about the CIA being part of the conspiracy. So, yeah, another little nugget of information there for you all. But really interesting one, really historical moment. Definitely one you should all go have a little read about if you have time, if you're interested in this sort of stuff. The more you find out about it, the more you will want to read about it. So I found it's one of those ones. So, yeah, cool. Mike, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for carrying me today. I feel rough, so thank you for carrying me.
Yeah, no, you're all good, man. I mean, I can always just chat away about anything, but maybe next week you can lead us on our.
What is it next week?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we let people just find out?
Have we decided?
No, that's not.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no. Cool. All right, let's wrap up there, dude. Much love. Cheers. Enjoy the rest of your bank holiday weekend.
See you later.
Bye. 1 minute.
It's quite cool over here.
I haven't got a fan in here, and there's like the sun's coming through the curtain. It's like radiating the room.
Headshot.
Yeah.
Boom, headshot.
Okay, we'll probably cut that.
Yeah.
Given today's topic.
Start when you start. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.